And now, on a pale horse. Chapter 6. Death's Dominion. The death car phased south, emerging in dense jungle. The rutted mud trail here was too difficult for the mechanical vehicle, so it shifted to the stallion Mortis and trotted readily through the steamy growth. "Halt!" someone cried in Spanish, the translation sounding in Zane's left ear. He looked around and spied a camouflaged soldier whose rifle was pointed menacingly. Zane halted, drawing cloak and hood close about him just in case. "Where is this?" "I'll ask the questions," the soldier snapped. "Who are you and what is your business?" Should he tell the truth? Zane knew that could complicate things, yet he was increasingly disinclined to deal in falsehood for any reason. "I am Death, come to collect a soul." "Oh, yes, sir," the soldier said, snapping to attention. Surely he had not heard what Zane had said. The words must have come across as the recognition code for a high officer of this army. Well, if that was the way of it, he would play the part, as he didn't want to get lost in a region of violence. "Identify yourself and your mission," Zane said curtly. "Sir, I am Fernando of the loyal Niceldemea army, on patrol to rout out the 7th Communist renegades." Zane remembered now. Niceldemea was a banana republic where guerrilla infiltration had been occurring for some years as the communists sought to topple its unpopular autocratic government. Naturally, there would be many killings here, and some would require Death's personal service. His watch showed 30 seconds. "Carry on, Fernando," he said, and urged Mortis on toward the rendezvous. In a moment he entered a rather pretty jungle clearing, but as he did so, small arms fire erupted. A bullet bounced off his impervious cloak. There was a scream beside him, and a Niceldemean soldier jumped up, stiffened, and spun to the ground. Zane needed only a glimpse before the man was buried in the brush below to see that the right side of his head was gone. He was definitely dead. In fact, it was amazing that he had been able to jump, but this was not Zane's client. This soldier could make it to eternity on his own. More government soldiers charged into the clearing, intent on obliterating the sniper. The ground gave way under 3 of them, and they fell, screaming, into a pit. Yet the surface of the ground remained unbroken. Zane realized that this trap was concealed by a spell of illusion. In one sense, illusion wasn't real, but it could be just as deadly as tangible magic. Enchantment was countering bullets quite effectively. Zane looked at his orientation stone. His client was in that pit, it seemed. Zane dismounted and stepped forward cautiously, following his gem arrow as his watch countdown swung to 0. His foot found the edge. He squatted, then sat, putting his feet down into the invisible hole, leaning forward and getting his head inside the spelled region. Now he could see reality. It wasn't pretty. It was a large open cavity with a dozen sharpened wooden stakes set upright in the bottom. The 3 soldiers were skewered on these. 2 were dead, the 3rd dying. The 3rd was his client. Zane slid carefully down the steep side of the pit and landed on his feet. This required only a few seconds, but in that time he became aware how the man was suffering. The soldier had somehow turned as he fell, and the cruel spike had penetrated his back and emerged from the side of his abdomen. He had been impaled excruciatingly, his head and feet dangling down to the ground. His blood was hardly flowing. The stake filled the puncture. Zane tried to retch, but clamped his mouth shut. He lurched across and hooked out the soldier's soul, relieving him of his agony. Then he turned and leaned against the pit wall, breathing in long, shuddering efforts. "You're new at this, aren't you?" someone said. Zane turned about, still feeling dizzy and sick. A large man stood between the stakes. He wore brief, polished armor, a short woven metal skirt, and sported an ornate golden helmet. just like the picture of a Greek god of war, Zane exclaimed. Death, the man returned sardonically. I didn't know that I existed. War made an imperious gesture. And who but Mars do you suppose should supervise this altercation? No one else, Zane acknowledged, relaxing. I just didn't think it through. I have been meaning to meet you, Mars said. After all, we must often associate closely. Yes, Zane agreed distastefully. I'm still breaking in. I've got the routine down well enough, but scenes like this... This is a good scene, Mars said. Small but intense. It's the best that offers between major engagements. You like your work? Zane asked, hardly concealing his revulsion. What is accomplished by combat and bloodshed? I'm glad you asked that question, Mars said expansively, and suddenly Zane was sorry he had asked it. Speeches of self-justification were seldom worthwhile for any but the speaker. War is the final refuge against oppression and wrongdoing. You have another client on your watch. I'll walk with you while you attend to him. Zane saw that it was so. Now he lacked even the excuse to quit the company of this grim warrior. Mars walked to a corner of the pit where an earthen ramp led to the jungle floor. Zane glanced again at his watch, verifying that he had 5 minutes to reach another client close by, and followed. What refuge do these dead soldiers have? Zane asked, discomfited. How did this battle help them? They have glory, Mars explained. All men must die sometime, and most go ignominiously from age or illness or mishap. Only in war do large numbers get to expire in decent glory. Glory? Zane thought of his recent client, impaled agonizingly on a wooden stake. Seems more like gory to me. Mars bellowed out his laughter. Cute death! You perceive only the instant of discomfort. I perceive the eternal reputation. A moment of pain for eternal fame. These men are sacrificing their blood on the altar of righteousness. This is the termination that renders their entire mundane lives sublime. But what about those who die fighting for the wrong cause? There is no wrong cause. There are only alternate avenues to glory and honor. Alternate avenues? Zane exclaimed. It's pointless brutality. You speak of brutality, Mars said, as if pleased to meet the challenge of opposition. You are as brutal in your own office, I believe. How many of your clients go sweetly to eternity on blithe wings of song? I will answer that, damned few. Even your reforms are savage things, less defensible than what I offer my clients. Your clients are my clients, Zane protested. Your clients, my clients, Mars said, shrugging. He had excellently broad shoulders, making the shrug impressive. Some coincide, most don't. Consider the mode of executions. Do you approve of stoning a person to death regardless of his crime, which may have been simply making time with a willing woman? Of crucifying him for his religious beliefs? Of breaking his body on the wheel because he stole a loaf of bread to keep himself from starving? Or pulling his limbs off by means of chains attached to 6 horses because he refused to pay sufficient graft to get out of it, or burning him at the stake on a false charge of witchcraft? No, of course not, Zane said, taken aback by this savage catalogue. Mars had a rough and ready tongue. But execution has been reformed. Reformed, Mars snorted. I remember the French Reform. Dr. Guillotine invented a huge, humane blade to sever necks quickly and cleanly. No more of this messy and sometimes inaccurate chopping that could cut into the shoulder or lop off the top part of the head or even take out the hands of the innocent person holding the condemned head in place. This modern method brought elitism to the poor, for before then only nobles had warranted execution by the sword. But do you remember what they did with that invention? I will inform you. They discovered that it could bring mass production to political murder. They could kill thousands in a day, chop, chop. The French Revolution became notorious for that humane reform. Zane didn't answer. Mars was too ready to fight. They came to a ramshackle peasant house. A government soldier was passing it. Suddenly a child of about 10, a little girl, dashed out. The soldier swung his rifle around, but paused when he saw it wasn't a gorilla. The girl rushed up to him, carrying something in her hands. As she reached him, she did something to the object. "Hey, that's a grenade!" the soldier exclaimed, aghast. The girl flung her arms about him, still clutching the grenade. The soldier tried to get hold of it, but she clung like a leech, her thin frame possessing the strength of fanaticism. Then the grenade detonated. She had armed it as she approached. Pieces of the two of them sprayed outward. Blood splattered against the side of the house. "That was beautiful," Mars said. "That child brings great honor on her family." "Honor?" Zane cried, outraged. "I call it horror." "That too," Mars agreed equably. "They do tend to associate on such occasions. That's part of what makes even a minor fracas intriguing." Another soldier appeared. He had heard the explosion and now saw the carnage. This one had a hand-held flamethrower. He ignited it and swung the flame around toward the house. Another child, a boy, younger than the first, ran from the house toward the soldier, but the man played the flamethrower directly on him, and in an instant the child was a mass of fire. Then the soldier concentrated on the house, starting it burning. There was a whimper from the smoking mass on the ground. "Your client, I believe?" Mars reminded Zane. How could he have overlooked this? The death watch stood at 0, and the arrow pointed at the boy. Zane hurried over and took the child's soul. The whimpering ceased. "What honor was there for this child?" he demanded. "Not much," Mars admitted. "He failed in his mission. Failure does not deserve reward." "That wasn't my point. Without this war there would have been no deaths at all. I would never have been summoned. All this horror would never have existed." "On the contrary," Mars responded tolerantly. "Without this war, the oppression of this populace would have continued indefinitely, grinding the people down, dispossessing them of their property, starving them out. They would have died later, it is true, but in a worse manner, that of sheep led to the slaughter. Now they are learning to die in the manner of wolves defending their territory. Violence is but the most visible aspect of a necessary correction, much as an earthquake is a release of enormous subterranean pressures. Blame not the symptom, my good associate. Blame the fundamental social inequities that stifle innovation and freedom and can be corrected in no other way. I come to right wrongs, not to wrong rights. I am the surgeon's scalpel that removes the cancer. My edge may hurt for a moment, and some blood may flow, but my cause is just, as is yours." Zane found himself unable to refute the ready and rough-hewn logic of Mars. But as he looked at the still smoking little corpse of the child, whose soul he had harvested, he feared it was not God whom Mars served, so much as Satan. "I think in due course you will find yourself at war," Mars continued. "I recommend that you prepare yourself for that occasion by familiarizing yourself with your weapon." "My only weapon is the scythe," Zane muttered. "And an excellent one it is," Mars agreed. "Mortis," Zane called, and the good death steed appeared. Zane mounted and departed, without speaking again to Mars. He arrived early, as he was doing more often now. The address was a run-down nursing home in a slum district in the resort city of Miami, wedged between a rickety dance hall and an old evangelistic church. The interior was gloomy and stank of urine. Old people sat unmoving, perhaps asleep. There were no games or magazines, and no conversations. The general mood was hopelessness. Zane didn't like such places, and had fought to keep his mother out of one too successfully. His client was an old man with a white shock of hair and a dribble of brown where the corner of his mouth leaked. Zane walked toward him, but paused as he saw the rope. "You're tied to your chair," he exclaimed. The man looked up. "Otherwise I'd fall," he explained. Zane realized that adequate facilities and competent attendants were beyond the means of this establishment. The poor and homeless couldn't afford a luxurious retirement. "One favor," the man said, "if it's not too much to ask." "If I can grant it," Zane said guardedly. "You know I can't grant a reprieve if it's a terminal illness that I'd like to have a hymn to see me out." Zane was surprised. "A hymn?" "Holy, holy, holy. It's my favorite. I haven't heard it in years, and I miss it." Zane wrestled with perplexity. "You want someone to sing a song?" "Oh, a recording would be fine," the old man said. "Just to hear the sound. It's a great hymn, but I know my wish is foolish." Zane considered. "It seems simple enough." The man shook his head, now ready to argue the other side. "They don't allow music here." Another man spoke up. "We get enough noise from the neighbors, though, that infernal racket from the dance hall, so we can't sleep at night, and those screaming sermons and rehearsals from the other side, that jellicle church." Now there was general interest as the others in the room came to life. Zane's appearance was a novelty, relieving the utter boredom they were accustomed to. "Everyone else gets to do his thing, why not us? What's wrong with one hymn?" "I think you should have it," Zane said. "All we need is a phonograph or a cassette player or a magic music box." There was a murmur of demurral. "They won't let us have it," another man said. "You shall have it," Zane said firmly. He walked up to the nurse's station, where a male nurse was reading a popular magazine. There was a full-page color ad on the back. "Hell, it isn't just for badness anymore." Bright orange flames surrounded a scene of enthusiastic debauchery, and the D&D trademark devils were doing something that made Zane wince. "Nurse," he said. The nurse glanced up. "No music allowed, house rule," he said, and returned to his page. "We can make an exception," Zane said. "A man is about to die, tied to a chair like a condemned criminal. His last wish shall be honored." "Are you for real? Get out of here." The man's eyes remained on the page. Zane, annoyed, reached out and lifted the magazine from the nurse's hands. He leaned forward, gazing into the man's face. "There shall be music," he said. The man started to protest, but froze as he met the hollow eye of death. "There's nothing here," he mumbled, phased. "I would get fired if—" "Then we shall do it without you," Zane said. "You may register your protest for the record, but take care that it is not too vigorous. We are going to have one hymn here, with or without your cooperation." He pointed his finger at the man's nose. In the death glove it looked skeletal. "Do you understand?" The nurse blanched. "You aren't going to hurt anyone? I only follow rules. I don't want trouble, but I don't want anyone hurt." So the man did have some meager conscience. He was lazy and indifferent, but not evil. "One man will die as he was fated to. No one will be hurt." The nurse considered that, evidently having a bit of trouble reconciling death with not hurting. He swallowed. Then I'll call in my protest to the owner's answering service. It usually takes them forever to get back to me, especially when there's an emergency." He scowled. "Emergencies cost money." He reached for the phone. "But there's no stuff here to use, not even a radio. My boss says silence is golden, and he does love gold." Zane turned away, disgusted with that owner. Perhaps one day that character would discover himself grubbing for gold in hell. "I shall tend to this," he told his client, turning off his countdown timer. "You will not feel discomfort until you have had your hymn." He walked out of the nursing home. First he tried the dance hall next door. The entry foyer was crowded with machines dispensing candy bars, 2-bit love potions, slip her this and she'll promise you anything, and spot dressings for blisters. The main hall was empty, for this was the dead morning shift. Several shaggy teenagers were on the stage, working out with drums, guitars, and an electric organ, bashing out dissonance with a deafening beat. This was rehearsal time, though Zane couldn't see how such noise could profit from practice. Zane approached and put his hand on the largest drum, the fingers of the glove causing its sound to die immediately. "I require a performance," he said. He had their instant attention, though they did not recognize his nature. "Hey, a gig? How much?" "One song for charity next door." They laughed. "Charity? Go soak your snoot in battery acid, mister," the drummer said. "We don't do nothing for nothing." Zane turned his potent gaze on the kid. "One song." Like the nurse before him, the youth blanched. People seldom saw Death when they were not clients, or closely attached to clients, but Death could indeed force his awareness on them when he wished. Hardly ever did a person face Death directly without feeling the impact. Yeah, sure. Guess we can do one song, like for practice." "A hymn," Zane said. The laugh was louder, though somewhat uncertain. "Man, we don't do church junk. We're the living sludge. We boom, we flow, we fester. We don't damn well hymn." Again Zane delivered the death stare. Young punks like this were more resistant to it, since they didn't believe they were ever going to die. "One hymn. Holy, holy, holy." His bony, square eye sockets bore into the fleshed orbs before him. Again the kid was phased. "Sure, well, I guess we could try, like it's only one tune, but our singer's out. She's zonked on Magic H, and anyway, we'll have to rehearse. It'd take 2, maybe 3 days, just to start." "Now," Zane said, "within the hour, I will find you a singer." "But we don't have no music or nothing," the youth protested desperately. "That too I will provide," Zane said, controlling his ire. Had he ever been this age himself? "Go now to the nursing home next door and set up your gear. I will rejoin you with a singer presently." "Yeah, sure, man," the kid said faintly. "We'll be ready in half an hour, but, this ain't exactly our bag. It ain't going to be too sharp." "It will suffice." Zane left them and strode to the church on the other side of the nursing home. He was in luck. The church choir was rehearsing for the coming weekend service. Several black girls were present, doing what to Zane's ear was a mishmash of notes and ululations. The preacher spotted him immediately. "Hey, don't you go taking none of mine, Death," he protested. "We're good folk here. We don't want no trouble with you." Zane realized that this church might be poor and backward, but the preacher was a true man of God, able to discern a supernatural manifestation instantly. That would help. "I only want a hymn book and a singer," Zane said. "Hymn books we got," the old man said eagerly. "This white do-gooder group, they raise money, bought us books, don't know nothing about our music. Got a big pile of 'em under dust in the closet, but one of my girls, Death, I won't stand by and—" "Not to die," Zane said quickly. "To sing one hymn for the folk next door. For a man who is about to die." The preacher nodded. "Man's got a right to one last melody. What's it called?" "Holy, holy, holy." "That's in the book, but we don't sing it. Not our style." find a singer willing to try. The preacher addressed the practicing choir. Anyone sing white music, hymn book stuff? There was a murmur of confused negation. Listen, the preacher said. You don't know this person in the hood, and you don't want to, but I know him. The eye of the Lord is on him, and he needs one hymn, and we've got to help him any way we can. So if any of you can even try to oblige him, come on. At length, one rather pretty girl in her teens spoke. Sometime I sing along on the radio stuff just for fun. I guess I could try if I got the words. The preacher rummaged in the closet and brought out an armful of hymn books. You got the words, sister. Come on. We'll go help this person. Won't be long. Zane took some of the books and led the way to the nursing home, where the live-in sludge was setting up to the considerable entertainment of the inmates and the non-protesting nurse. Probably there had not been an event like this here in decades. Tables and loudspeakers and instruments seemed to fill the main room. Hey, don't set those big speakers in here, the nurse was saying. Small place like this, that noise will deafen these old folk, and they've got problems enough already. Face those monsters out the windows. And it was done, for it seemed the live-in sludge was constitutionally unable to function without full volume amplification. The young singer eyed the sludge, and the sludge eyed her. Each evinced a certain morbid fascination with an alien life form, but neither evinced approval. Zane realized it had probably been a mistake to involve the instrumental group. The girl would have done better a cappella. Too late now. The preacher stepped in, seeing the need. You boys don't know hymn music, okay? This is limo. She don't know junk music, so you're even. So let's try her doing the hymn you follow, okay? He was more or less speaking pidgin in order to get his meaning across to these foreigners. He passed out the hymn books. The musicians leafed through the books, bewildered. This scene's worse'n bad-spelled H, one muttered. Zane knew that H was bad, enchanted H was worse, and badly enchanted H was a horror. But addicts had to take what they could get. We'll never live this down. You boys getting high on S.H.? The preacher asked, frowning. That'll put you in H. He pointed down, signaling the change in meaning. You better find some better interest before it's too late. Wish we could, the drummer confessed. But you know we're locked into the scene. S.H. don't let nobody go. Neither does H, the preacher said, with a dark glance down. Nobody hooked on either H in my church. Yeah, sure, the drummer said wearily. Zane got them on the page with Holy, Holy, Holy. Play this, he said. They tried. They were, underneath, reasonably competent musicians. The tune did not adapt well to drum and guitar, but the electric organ picked it up easily enough. The phone rang, the sound almost lost amidst the noise of preparations. But I can't sing into a mic, Lou May protested. It's in my way, and it looks funny. I'll tell you what it looks like, the sludge drummer said, grinning. Just ignore it, sister, the preacher advised quickly. Just sing your way. There are people gathering outside, a nursing home inmate cried gleefully by the window, gawking at the loudspeakers. Hey, they must think we have a party in here, another said, cutting the mustard. Sure we are, you can tell by the smell. Laughter burbled around the inmate sector. This was turning into the biggest event of these old people's lives. Hey, mister, the male nurse called through the din. That was my boss on the line. For once he checked with his answering service. I told him I couldn't stop the music, so he's calling the police. Better do that song and get out of here soon. It was fair warning, but obviously the nurse was enjoying the ongoing event. The sludge was still getting organized, piecing out bits of melody, trying to integrate unfamiliar elements. I can't do this, Lou May complained. Singing a hymn to a drum roll? Listen, Black Doll, we don't like it either, the drummer said, but we got to have a beat. You just do your best, the preacher said soothingly to both. The Lord will make it right. Man, he better, the drummer muttered. This whole thing's crazier than a double-bum trip. Still worth doing right, the preacher said. Zane heard the sound of a siren. He went to the door where the other choir singers clustered, peering in. They gave way nervously before him, and Zane saw the police cars arriving. the vehicle screeched up to the nearest corner and disgorged helmeted riot police. These were tough cops armed with billy clubs, hefty sidearms, tear gas bombs, and disorientation spells, accustomed to breaking heads in the lawful performance of their duty. That nursing home owner had really made a complaint. Zane turned to face inside. "Do the hymn now," he said. Lu Mei, suddenly nervous, dropped her book and had to scramble to recover it. "It's okay, chick," the drummer said sympathetically. "First night jitters, we all get 'em. We'll start without you, a preamble, and you catch your place and signal when you're ready. Like Uncle Tom says, we'll merge." She flashed him a fleeting smile. The music started, drum roll leading into guitar, the beat of it blasting like developing thunder out the windows as the police charged up the steps, billies in hand. The choir girls crowded back fearfully, not liking any close contact with the big, brutal men in uniform. Zane drew his cloak close about him and stepped out to meet the lead cop skull to face. "Do we have business?" he asked. The policeman's eyes and mouth rounded out as he stared into the aspect of death. He fell back, literally, and had to be caught by the two behind him. The urgency of the intrusion of the law abruptly abated. Now Lu Mei found her place. The drum faded to a background beat, and the song proper began. "Holy, holy, holy, Lord God Almighty," she sang, starting tremulously, but gaining courage as she sounded the name of the Lord. Somehow the amplification provided resonance and authority that her voice might otherwise have lacked. The drum roll behind her growled like the rising wrath of deity, and the guitar punctuated the theme with an inspired extemporaneous counterpoint. "Early in the morning our song shall rise to thee." And the electric organ swelled in a surge of joyous worship, sounding exactly like the monstrous pipes of a towering cathedral. The crowd in the street was being rapidly augmented. Some of the police were trying to hold the people back. It was already late morning, but the height of the surrounding buildings sheltered the street from direct sunlight. Now that light angled down, a broad beam that splashed across the pale helmets of the police and faces of the people, illuminating them, as if it were indeed the break of day or of a new era. "Only thou art holy, all the saints adore thee." The sound pealed out, flooding the neighborhood, reverberating amidst the buildings. Instruments and voice had integrated perfectly, as if from years of devoted practice. "Casting down their golden crowns around the glassy sea." And the police, stunned despite their cynicism by the magnificence of it, buffeted by the booming sound, began to remove their sunlight golden helmets. The people followed, compelled by a feeling they did not comprehend. In a moment every head in the crowd was bare. "Cherubim and seraphim falling down before thee." And one of the impressionable choir girls by the door screamed in rapture and fell to the sidewalk. Once triggered, the effect spread explosively. All around, people in the crowd screamed and fell, and a few of the policemen, too. The music surged to thunderous authority, drums and organ shaking the very buildings, sweeping through the crowd, making the entire block a place of worship. Some people stood, some knelt, some lay on the street. All were gazing raptly toward the nursing home and listening to the amazing sound. "Who wert and art, and evermore shall be." Then the hymn ended, and the music died away in a fading roll of the drum and a trailing organ note, as if God were moving on to another station. Half the crowd and all the choir girls were on the ground. and the policemen stared wide-eyed at whatever personal visions they had. No one made a sound. Zane turned to face inside again. The inmates were sitting, dazed, as was the male nurse. The drummer and Lu Mei were exchanging an awed glance. The preacher was gazing toward heaven, his hands steepled before him in silent prayer. "Jeez," the guitarist murmured. "We've been wasting our time all our life." "Who the H needs H?" the organist agreed. "I never been on a trip like that." Zane walked across to his client. "Now it is time," he said, restarting his timer. "Are you satisfied?" The old man was smiling. "I sure am, Death. I just had a vision of the Lord God Almighty. Anything else in life would be anticlimactic after that. I saw 2 of my friends here go already." He collapsed, and Zane reached out quickly to catch his soul. A slow recovery was beginning as he walked back toward the door. The preacher caught Zane's eye. "Some folk think the Lord don't intervene," he remarked gently, as if aware of Zane's own doubts. Zane couldn't answer. He walked on out, past the choir girls as they righted themselves, and through the quiet crowd to his horse. A new vehicle was pulling up, with the emblem of the State Social Services on its side. It seemed the commotion had attracted the notice of the relevant authorities, and there was about to be an inspection of the nursing home facility and operation. Zane allowed himself a private smile. They would discover 1 or more dead men tied to their chairs, in a room reeking of urine where no music or entertainment was permitted. These strictures so absolute that the police had been summoned to enforce them. Zane doubted that would make a favorable impression on the inspectors. Substantial reform was about to come to one nursing home, and the lot of the surviving inmates would be improved. He glanced once more around the neighborhood before he left. There stood the church, nursing home, and dance hall in a row. Surely the fate of all 3 would improve now that they had interacted in this fashion, and discovered what each had to offer the others, and there would be music for everyone. Maybe the entire city of Miami would experience a gradual renovation as the spirit of this hour spread. His next client was in the country. Mortis changed to Deathmobile form and drove along the superhighway as they were not pinched for time. Zane read the billboards and realized there was an ad war on here. "Why drive a land-bound car when you can ride a carpet?" the first billboard demanded in huge, shining print. The picture was of a car struggling through a traffic jam while a magic carpet sailed blithely over, its handsome family smiling. Zane also smiled. He was at the moment car-bound, but he would never be trapped in a traffic jam. Not with Mortis. "Did you show me this just to make me appreciate you properly?" The car didn't answer, but the motor purred. The next billboard proclaimed, "Drive in comfort." The picture was of a family huddled on a flying carpet in a rainstorm. The man looked grim and uncomfortable. The woman's once elegant hairdo was a wet mess plastered about her ears, and one child was sliding off the rear, about to fall. The material was evidently wrinkling and shrinking in the rain, heightening the family's discomfort and peril. Below, the same family could be seen happily in a closed car, safely seatbelted, untouched by the rain. "So the car fights back," Zane remarked. "I can see it." He glanced at his watch. Still several minutes to go. The next billboard showed the carpet sailing blithely over the rain cloud that largely obscured the traffic jam below. "Babylon carpets outperform any land-bound vehicle," it proclaimed. "More distance per spell." But the automaker came right back with a picture of the family gasping for air aboard the high-flying carpet while the car zoomed along the open highway. "Keep safe, keep cozy," it advised. "Use a car instead of a carpet." Perhaps the ad war continued, but Zane had to turn off to approach his client. This was a residential enclave in the countryside. The houses were very similar to one another, the lawn manicured. Zane wondered why people bothered to live in the country when all they did was take the city with them. He turned into the appropriate drive and parked in the limited shade of a medium pine tree. He noticed there was a disabled sticker on the owner's car. Evidently the disablement was terminal. Zane entered and made his way to the bathroom. There was a young, fairly muscular man taking a deep bath. He looked relaxed. The man did not react to Zane's appearance and did not seem to be in trouble, yet the gem arrow identified him as the client. "Hello," Zane said, uncertain how to proceed. The man glanced up languidly. "Please leave," he said, his voice mild. "First I must do my job," Zane said. "Job? Perhaps you're in uniform and assume I recognize your business. I can't see you, for I'm blind." Oh, that accounted for the disabled sticker. But mere sightlessness wouldn't kill this man unless some bad accident were coming up. "I suspect you will be able to see me if you try," Zane said. "You're a faith healer? Go away. I'm an atheist and have no traffic with your kind." An atheist? One who didn't believe in God or Satan or in their related artifacts. How could death have been summoned for a non-believer? Two answers offered. It was possible that this man was not as cynical as he professed, and really did believe in eternity, perhaps unconsciously. Or it could be that there had been another glitch, and that the powers that be had not realized that no service was required for this particular client. Well, Zane was here, and the case would have to be played through to whatever conclusion was fated. He looked at the water in the bath and saw that it was discolored by a cloud of darkness. "You're committing suicide," he stated. "Yes, and I must ask you not to interfere. My folks are away for 2 days, so will not know until it is safely done. I have slashed veins in my ankles and am presently bleeding to death in this hot water. There is no greater kindness you can do me than to let nature take its course." "I am here for that," Zane said. "I am deaf." The man laughed, becoming more animated as his attention focused. "An actual, physical personification of death? You're crazy." "You don't believe in death?" "I believe in death, small d, obviously. I'm about to experience it. Certainly I don't believe in a spook with skull and crossbones and scythe." "Would you like to touch my hand and face?" Zane asked. "You persist in this nonsense. Very well, while I still command my faculties, let me touch you." The man lifted an arm from the water with some visible effort, and extended it toward Zane. Zane clasped that hand in his own gloved one, curious how the man would perceive it. He was hardly disappointed in the reaction. "It's true," the man exclaimed. "A skeleton." "A glove," Zane said, not wanting to deceive him. "And my face is a skull mask generated by magic. Nevertheless, I am death, and I've come to collect your soul." The man touched Zane's face. "A mask? It could fool me. That's a skull." Zane had been uncertain before whether his skull face was tactile as well as visual. Now he knew. "I am a living man performing an office. I wear a costume and have certain necessary powers, but I am alive and have the flesh and feelings of a man." The client took his hand again. "Yes, now I perceive the flesh faintly, the way I do my own when my foot is asleep. Strange. Perhaps I do believe in you, or in your belief in the office, but I don't believe in the soul, so your effort is wasted." "What do you believe happens when you die?" Zane asked, genuinely curious. This man seemed to have a good mind. "My body will be inert and in time will dissolve into its chemical components." "But that is not what you mean, is it? You want to know about my supposed soul, and I will answer, there is no soul. Death is simply the end of consciousness. After death there is nothing. Like the flame of a candle snuffed out, the animation is gone. Extinction. No afterlife? You don't consider death a translation to a spiritual existence? The man snorted. He was slowly sinking in the tub, as loss of blood weakened him gradually, but his mind remained alert. Death is a translation to intellectual non-existence. Does that frighten you? Why should it? It is the deaths of others I should fear, for they can cause me inconvenience and grief. When I myself pass, I shall be out of it, completely uncaring. You haven't answered, Zane said. The man grimaced. Damn it, you are putting my toes to the fire. Yes, my own death does frighten me, but I know that is merely my instinct of self-preservation manifesting, my body's effort to survive. Subjectively, I do fear extinction because instinct is irrational. Objectively, I do not. I have no terror of the non-existence before I was conceived. Why should I fear the non-existence after I die? So I have overridden the foible of the flesh, and am proceeding to my end. Wouldn't you be relieved to discover that life continues on the spiritual plane? No, I do not want life to continue in any form. What uncertainties or tortures might I experience there? What tedium, existing for eternity with no reprieve in another person's sterile conception of heaven? No, my life is the only game, and the game has soured. And I want nothing more than to be able to lay it aside when its convenience is over. Oblivion is the greatest gift I can look forward to, and heaven itself would be hell to me if that gift were denied. I hope you find it, Zane said, shaken by this unusual view. A man who actually insisted on oblivion. I hope so, too. Now the atheist was fading rapidly. The loss of blood was affecting his consciousness, and soon he would faint. A man's death is the most private part of his life, Zane said. You have the right to die as you wish. That's correct. The voice was slow and faint. Nobody's business but mine. Yet shouldn't you be concerned about the meaning of your life, about your place in the greater scheme of things? Before you throw away your one chance to improve? Why the hell should I care about improvement when I don't believe in heaven or hell? The atheist demanded weakly. Yet you assume that your own relief is all that matters, Zane said. What of those you love, who remain in life? Those who love you and who will find your body here a horror to them, they will still suffer. Don't you owe them anything? But the atheist was too far gone. He had lost consciousness and no longer cared who else might suffer, if he ever had cared. In due course he died. Zane reached in and drew out his soul. It was a typical mottled thing, good and evil spotting it in a complex mosaic. He started to fold it, and the soul disintegrated, falling apart into nothingness. The atheist had his wish. He really had not believed, and so the afterlife had been unable to hold him. He was beyond the reach of God or Satan. That did seem best. It was best, but was it right? The atheist had not seemed to care about anyone except himself, and in that uncaring, perhaps had rendered his own existence meaningless. Zane rejoined Mortis. I think that man was half right, he said. He is better off out of the game, but the game may not be better off without him. A man shouldn't exist for himself alone. Life made an investment in him, and that investment wasn't paid off. But Zane wasn't sure. His timer was going again. He oriented on the next client, wondering how he was going to account for the soul that disintegrated. The Purgatory News Center would have a ball with that one. He visualized the headline, "The Fish That Got Away." He arrived at a hospital. That was not unusual. The terminally sick tended to congregate there, and he had made a number of similar collections all over the world. But he still didn't like hospitals very well because of his lingering guilt relating to his mother. At the edge of the parking lot was an ad, for once not satanic. Sheep's head horn of plenty, more fruit than brands X, Y, and Z horns. Just the thing to buy for a hospitalized person recovering from stomach surgery. Zane felt worse when he saw his client. It was an old woman, and she was embedded in a mass of lines and burbling devices. Some sort of bellows forced her to breathe rhythmically, and monitors clicked and bleeped to signal her heartbeat, digestion, and state of consciousness. Her blood coursed through the tubes of a dialysis machine. A nurse checked the equipment regularly, going on to the others in the ward. There were 5 other patients here, all similarly equipped. The client's hospital gown was draped awkwardly, as such things seemed to be designed to do, so that embarrassing portions of her wasted anatomy showed. She was in pain, Zane could see, though half zonked on therapeutic drugs. She was overdue to die. Only the relentlessly life-sustaining things enclosing her frail body prevented her from doing so. Déjà vu. His mother all over again. Zane approached. She spied him, and her bloodshot eyes tracked him erratically. The tubes running into her nose prevented her from turning her head conveniently, and the machine set up a clangor of protest when she tried to shift her body. "Be at ease, lady," Zane said. "I've come to take you away from this." She issued a weak hiss of a laugh. "Nothing can take me away," she gasped, spittle dribbling from her mouth. "They will not let me go. All my pleading is in vain. I may rot in this contraption, but I will still be alive. I am deaf. I may not be denied." She peered more closely at him. "Why, so you are. I thought you looked familiar. I would gladly go with you, but they won't give me the visa." Zane smiled. "It is your right to make the transformation. That right cannot be abridged." He reached into her body and caught her soul. It didn't come. The woman keened weakly with new agony until he let the soul go. It snapped back into place, and she relaxed. "You see," she whispered, "they have anchored me in life, though it isn't worth it. You can't take me, death." Zane looked at his watch. It was 15 seconds past time. The woman really was being held beyond her destiny. "Let me consider," Zane said, disgruntled. He walked down the ward, glancing at the other patients. He saw now that the details of their apparatus differed, but all were caught beyond their natural spans, and all were similarly resigned to their fate. They might have no joy in life, but they would not be released from it 1 second before the machines gave out. This was one efficient hospital. There were no slip-ups. "I see you, Death," someone murmured nearby. Zane looked. It was a male patient in the adjacent rig. Unlike some of the others, this one was fully alert. "I can't take her soul while that equipment functions," Zane said, wondering why he was bothering to explain to a non-client. The old man shook his head, causing his own apparatus to protest. "Never thought I'd see the day when death was denied. That leaves taxes as the only certainty." He essayed a feeble laugh that made his dials quiver and alarmed the nurse on duty, who thought he was suffering a seizure. She seemed unaware of Zane. After a moment the man spoke again. "If it was me, Death, know what I'd do?" "That old woman, my client," Zane said. "She reminds me of my mother." And what a mass of guilt lay there, tying into his conscience like the lines of the hospital machines. "She's somebody's mother," the man agreed. "It's her son who pays for all this foolery. Thinks he's doing her a favor, making her live beyond her time or will. If he really loved her, he'd let her go." "Doesn't he love her?" Zane had killed his own mother because he loved her, but then had doubted. Maybe he thinks so, but he's really just getting even. He's a mean man, and she brought him into this world, and I guess he just never forgave her for that, so he won't let her leave." Something snapped. "Death shall not be denied," Zane said. He marched back to his client's section. He found switches on the equipment and clicked them off. Oops! The nurse was on it immediately as the machinery bleeped alarm. She turned the switches on again. Zane ripped out wires and tubes. Fluid spurted. Now the nurse became aware of him. "You did it!" she cried, horrified. "You must stop!" Zane caught her in his arms and kissed her on the lips. She felt the skeletal embrace and fainted. He set her down carefully on the floor. He saw that automatic fail-safes were stopping the leaks in the torn tubes. The bleep-bleep alarm was more strident. Soon other nurses would hear and come. He could not be sure the job was done. Zane picked up a chair and smashed it into the stand, supporting the bottles of life-preserving fluids. Glass shattered, and colored liquids coursed across the floor. He put his foot against the console and shoved it over, indulging in an orgy of destruction that was the overt expression of his long-suppressed emotion. At last he stood over the old woman, chair raised to bash in her skull if need be. But he saw that now the job had been done. He set down the chair and lifted out her soul gently. There was a smattering of applause from the other patients as he put away the soul and walked out through the ward. All these people were on artificially extended time, so were able to perceive him for what he was. "But I am a murderer, again," Zane protested weakly, now suffering reaction. Never before had he actually killed in his role of death. There had been grim satisfaction in the act, but surely he had added an awful burden of sin to his soul. "I wish it was me you come for," one of the others muttered. "You can't murder our kind," the old man said, "any more'n you can rape a willing gal." Zane paused. "How many of you feel that way?" he asked. "How many really want to die now?" A murmur traveled along the ward, like a ripple of water. "We all do," the old man said, and the others agreed. Zane pondered briefly. He heard the running footsteps of others in the bowels of the hospital, becoming aware that something was wrong. Time was limited. He had done his assigned job. He had collected the old woman's soul and, in his fashion, had redeemed his murder of his mother. He had now done openly what he had done covertly before. He had shown that even death himself would have made the same decision Zane had long ago. But had he done his human job? These people were being denied their most fundamental right, the right to let life go. "You know it would be mass murder," he said. "It would be mercy," the old man said. "My grandchild is going broke paying for me because the doctor says she must, and for what? For this? For eternity in a hospital ward, too sick to move, let alone enjoy life? Hell can't be worse than this, and if it is, I'll take it anyway. At least there maybe I'll have a chance to fight back. Cut me loose, Death. There's more'n just us patients suffering here, it's our families too. They'll cry a while, but soon they'll heal, and maybe they'll still have a little something left to live on." Zane decided. He was already doomed to hell for his violations of the standards of his office. What did he have to lose? He wanted to do what was right, regardless of the consequence. These were his clients, too. He went to the service area of the ward. There was the main circuit box. He yanked down all the handles. Power died in the ward. Darkness closed in. The machinery stopped running. There was an immediate outcry. Hospital personnel rushed in. Someone groped her way to the circuit box, but Zane stood before it. The nurse felt a skeletal hand close on hers, pushing her away from the box. She screamed in sheerest terror. "That is the horror you have been visiting on these patients," Zane told her. "Death in life." No one could reverse what he had done this time.